So we started out, first session was endless possibilities, so generating lots of ideas. The second one was your N.I.L needs a business model canvas, so creating that business model canvas, really identifying who are the customers, what's their value, what do you need to kind of get the thing in motion. And last week we looked at build it, so building those social brands, building the presence, creating all the channels, creating the content, like really getting it in motion so that you have something to show when someone's looking, whether it's a fan thinking of following you or it's a potential sponsor that wants to hire you. So this week I called this one Hustle and Influence, a little bit of a playoff on the influencer app there. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but a big part of it is just the hustle. I think one of the things, like the whole TikTok experiment was sort of to demonstrate that even if you aren't doing anything great, if you're doing it consistently, it's gonna have some impact. So I've been able to generate a little bit of activity just in by creating a few videos, and whenever you have something, a topic someone's interested in, have a lot more effect. And so the hustle today, I'm going to kind of give some frameworks for just where to kind of focus attention and different things that you can do with it. And then with influencer, I'll just point out some things. I spent a lot of time talking to the folks at Influencer. I've been kind of working my way through the app. I have some ideas about how you maybe get the most out of that application, and just in terms of connections and just just getting your name. I thought I would introduce this book, which is one that I use in one of my classes. It's a pretty cool book if you have an interest in doing a side hustle, and really a N.I.L, things you can do with your N.I.L are like side hustles. So this book by Chris Guillebeau is called From Idea to Income in 27 Days. It's really just a day-by-day guide to taking a business idea and launching it. And so within your N.I.L, any idea you might have, whether it's getting a following on a TikTok, or whether it's creating like merch to sell or doing events or anything like that, it's all the same types of principles. So I thought I would just highlight here the kind of the weekly rundown, and you'll see a lot of parallels to the content that we did in this course. So the first is build an arsenal of ideas. That's that first one of like kind of that ideation, come up with 10 ideas, 20 ideas, 50 ideas, as many as you can come up with. Because the more ideas you have, then you can try one, and if it doesn't work as well as you'd like, you can always move on to another one. Or sometimes you bring two ideas together, and that can be pretty interesting, and you do something that's different and unique. So week 2, select your best idea. So once you've kind of gone through and identified all the different ideas you could do, zeroing in on one and starting to focus there, at least for a period of time. The great thing with N.I.L is there's so many different possibilities that you could do one, you might try it all the way through, get it up and running, and then do a second one, or maybe do a few at a time to see what gets the most traction. So the third is prepare for liftoff. In a lot of ways, we talked about the business model canvas. That was really setting the stage. And then the build it. It's like really getting everything ready to go. So it's that planning and preparing. Next is launch your idea to the right people. And the last phrase here is key. Everything with entrepreneurship is focused on kind of who is the customer, what is the value that you bring to them, what is the problem that you solve. And so if you have a great idea but you launch it to a group of people that don't care, then it doesn't have the effect. Now what I think is pretty interesting, we looked at this with the business model canvas last week, there's really a couple of different audiences that are going to matter, because you may develop a huge following of people that are interested in your sport or you as an athlete, but they may not necessarily be the ones that are going to hire you in some way to monetize your N.I.L. So it may be that youth athletes or parents of youth athletes are customer segments that are really going to value the brand and really value the content that you put out. But it may be that it's like someone who wants to promote something, a business or a product or something, to that group that might actually pay you to do an appearance or a promo or something like that. So really identifying what those audiences are, who they are, and launching in a way that you're really reaching them. So the last one is then regroup and refine. So once an idea gets out there, so a TikTok is a good example. So my TikTok, I've spent now about 3 weeks. I've kind of launched it out there. I've tried to find an audience. I am now going to regroup and refine, because maybe this isn't the right audience for me. Hard to say, but the point is, like, as you put something out there, you may find right away you've got a huge following that's starting to grow and a lot of traction, whereas if something's not working, you may move to something else. So if the idea is you want to do a motivational talk, you might create a motivational talk, start to put versions of that out there for free use, and you may start to refine your message as you start to talk to potential companies, employers, or whoever might want to have you come in and do that talk. You may find, well, okay, these 2 points really resonate, but this third one doesn't resonate as much, and a lot of people are interested in this thing over here. So those are the kinds of things where you can refine the process as you go based on the feedback you get along the way. So that's the idea. If you have a chance, quick read, really interesting book, and it literally like goes day by day for 27 days. So if you have whatever idea you have, if you wanted a kind of a step-by-step guide, it's a good one too. So what I wanted to do for the bulk of the time today is kind of talk about what does it look like what's the hustle look like? What might that look like? And if you think about being on the field, for a game, that's not the only engagement, right? It's like every day there's practice, there's workouts, there's training, there's just drills, whatever the regimen is. Working with your N.I.L and kind of creating that brand image can be very much the same thing. It's like you build a plan and you work the plan. And it may be very different from one sport to the next, or for you it might be very different depending on if you're going to focus on motivational talks or if you're going to focus on merch or something like that. It may look very different. And you may also have these waves. It's like it may not be something where you're real active during your main season because you've got to be 100% focused. But in your off season, you can be really kind of building the brand so that when it comes game time, you're just kind of posting actual content of like what's happening in games, but not doing as much in the others. And I do kind of like the idea of team up. Find somebody that's got a sport that's on a different cycle, and see if you can work together to build that out. So here's kind of the flow that I thought of here, and just kind of following the model all the way through. It's first of all it's planning. It's around plan in terms of fans and sponsors. It's building content. Smile and Dow, as I'll call it. It's just get out there and make contacts. Be proactive. Look for all kinds of ways to monetize. And then of course I just put a couple things here related to the influencer app because I think there's a lot of opportunities there. So let me just walk through each of these. So first is build your plan for engaging fans. And I think these are two very different things, and that's why I kind of call them out. It's almost like you need two different plans. You have two different segments. So fans, who's kind of interested in kind of being like having an ongoing engagement with you or following you or whatever the case may be. And then there's those that, who would like, if you had a large following, who might hire you? And I think those are two different audiences, so I think you have to handle them a little bit differently. So I think two different plans here are important. I would say starting small is, if you haven't done anything yet, start with the first one because, the sooner you get a larger following of fans, the more, the larger your fan base is, the more valuable you are to someone who might hire you. If you come to somebody and say, I have 500 very active fans, that's probably a good thing. But it'd be better if you could say 5,000 active fans. And active is a key word there because, having even 50 or 100 active fans or active followers is very different than those that are just kind of passively noticing you or connected to you. So, going back to my example, my TikTok, 17,000 views, average watch time is like 2.5 seconds. So that's not awesome. Like those aren't engaged fans. And in most of the videos I say, hey, click on my YouTube channel. No one's gone to my YouTube channel. So, and very few people have even looked at my profile. So, point is like there's a difference, and Liam talked about this in week 2. It's like there's a difference between, maybe getting a certain kind of engagement versus having the influence to be able to say something and it results in an action. And so that's where, building that following is kind of step one no matter what. But I think the sooner you can start to really build this plan, which is engaging sponsors, I think those that do this are going to be in a very, very small elite club. And I say that just, kind of seeing like not a lot of athletes are really doing a whole lot so far to really develop these relationships. And they're not something that happens overnight. This is not necessarily somebody that immediately follows the sport or follows you as an athlete, but somebody that would appreciate and understand what it is you represent and what they can do in terms of driving their business with the interaction. So a couple things in terms of this plan. Well, let me just highlight on the fans. And these I think are pretty obvious, but it's identifying who they are. And that's what we talked about in week 1. Who are your fans and who wants to be as great as you? Like who's really got that interest? And then what's your unique value? Going back to that phrase, we've said it a bunch of times, like if you're not number one in your category, create a new category, right? So if you know, kind of find that unique thing that is uniquely you, and then really promote that. And then you know, get really clear on how are you going to reach the fan base. You know, is it through TikTok? Is it through Instagram? Is it through Twitter? Is it through maybe one of the texting apps and different platforms that are out there to try to help you engage with fans? Particularly, and to me, it's funny because over 20 some years of like watching the evolution of social media, the one thing that seems, it's like the social media platform of the day changes regularly. You know, it was MySpace, and then it was Facebook, and then it was Twitter, and then it was Insta, and now it's TikTok, and maybe Meta's going to come back, or who knows. But whatever it is, like that changes. But email is the one thing that still always threads through because everybody has email in some way, shape, or form. And so when I've looked at brands and companies that have kept a very loyal base and built a very large base over time, there's usually, they have whatever the social media is and the engagement through that, but they're also always looking for ways to capture that email address because that becomes like almost like a permanent address in a world that's otherwise pretty rapidly changing. And so, some kind of like MailChimp or Constant Contact or a platform that manages that, it's like almost like every time you engage with someone, say, it's like I've got a free newsletter or sign up for this or whatever, but try to grab that email address and put them into something where, you don't want to blast them with spam, but at the same time, having that ability to communicate with them over time, regardless of platform, can be really powerful. So that one's helpful. And then share moments, games, and life. So that's really what TikTok's about, right? It's like, just kind of sharing what's going on in your life, what you're interested in, what's happening, doing something that's interesting. I really liked, and we'll glance at this again, we talked about last week, Liam talked about, it may be that, that TikTok is where you really start to get a lot of people connected to you and following you, but it may be Instagram where you actually show what's going on on the field or on the court, the images, videos, anything that you have that kind of shows what you're doing. It's sort of your body of work on the field. And then at the same time, you may use something like LinkedIn to connect instead with like sponsors, where, more corporate environments, that still tends to be more the standard for that audience. And, that it's an audience that's maybe more likely to do the hiring. So, kind of figuring out which channel fits with which one of this customer segments that you have. Okay, so engaging sponsors. The first is really creating a pitch. It's almost like, in entrepreneurship, a lot of times you'll hear people talk about pitches to get like an investor or like Shark Tank. You'll hear the term elevator pitch. It's just like in 90 seconds, can you say why it's valuable, why, what you bring to the table is valuable. It's like having that really clear message. If you made a contact with someone who's in a professional setting, maybe a talent director of a company, say, oh, what do you do? I'm a student athlete, and I help companies really integrate the idea of teamwork and collaboration into their employee base through these talks that I give. And I'd love to share more if you're interested. It's like just something where you can really clearly and quickly say, this is what I do, this is what's unique about what I do, and this is where I could bring some value to you as a potential sponsor. So having that pitch that's ready to go, making contact. I know this sounds obvious, but I think those that reach out and make the ask are going to be the ones that win in the end, because it's like knowing who maybe is in a position to hire you or sponsor you or anything like that is going to be the first step. It's like knowing who they are, knowing how to get a hold of them, and then starting to make contact with them. It's like even if you just say, hey, I've got an event I'm doing in the town near you. I'd love to personally invite you to come out and check it out and see some of the things that I do and how I'm helping another local business to generate interest and draw people in. This one is audition with social proof and tailored content. Kind of going back to that idea of like if you start to do reviews of gear and then you go to one of the gear companies, you can show them your audition is, well, here's all the things I've done on social media where I've talked about your product and others like it. And I'd like to talk with you about sponsorship or engagement or promotions or something like that. The other thing is here, be ready to propose something. So I know a lot of times it's like the idea is like, okay, I can make money by promoting a product for someone. Well, what does that look like if somebody said, well, how would I hire you to do that? It's really helpful to have an answer to that question. Say, I specialize in events that involve training in my area, my sport, but also, do like an autograph signing at the end, or a lot of times it'll be like, we'll give each student a ball which I'll sign or something like that. And if you can say, I do these events, usually draws between 50 and 200 people over the course of a day, and I charge $500 for it. It's like having that very specific, concise proposal of this is what I can do for you, and this is what it would cost. For most businesses, like a car dealership, if you said to them, I think I can probably bring 200 people onto your lot because they're going to bring their kids for a free clinic for soccer or lacrosse or field hockey or something like that. For $500, that may be a very quick decision for them because that's a great way to do it. And the next time when they're like, you want to hire you back, it's like, well, I gave you a discount this time because I wanted to show you. And they're like, we just sold 19 cars. I guess maybe this is a good idea. And then, and then that can then become an ongoing relationship as well. Something that maybe you do it monthly or something like that if they find it's effective. And then the last is offer package deals. So, I think as this is kind of a new thing, doing like one event or proposing one thing makes sense. But I think what we're going to see in the next couple of years is more and more athletes are going to find that they can do different types of events and activities that are really valuable to the people that hire them. And so there's going to be companies that have never even thought of sponsoring athletes before are going to start to do that, and there's going to be more and more of these types of opportunities. So in the short run, it's almost like you're kind of getting a company used to the idea of sponsoring an athlete, but in the future, that'll be normal. But where a one-off maybe makes sense now, where somebody's like, I'm not sure how this is going to work. Okay, well why don't we do a Saturday? We'll do a 2-hour clinic and an autograph signing, and and it's $500. Let's see how that works. Whereas in the future, somebody may say, wow, I can totally see why this is valuable. You might offer, what I'll do is I will do a series of TikTok posts that kind of in preparation to that kind of pointing to this event coming up. We'll do the event. We'll do some follow-up. We'll capture email addresses at the event. We'll do a contest or giveaway or something like that. And then maybe it's like maybe the giveaway is there's a week-long camp coming up, and the winner gets a free spot at that camp, and then we can promote the camp at the same time for those that might pay to do it, and you can be the sponsor of the camp. So you might put that all together and say, okay, here's a package. It's $2,000. It has a 2-hour event, social media leading up to a 2-hour event. It's got some email follow-up. It's got a contest. Somebody gets to go to this camp. You're the sponsor of the camp. Package deal. Because that's where once someone's sold on the idea, then you can bring you can really kind of increase the price point just by bringing an idea to them that's very specific. The other thing that's oftentimes helpful, and if you think about when you buy things, sometimes having multiple choices. It's like, well, I can do a 2-hour event for $500. You could sponsor my camp for $1,500, or you can do this package where I do a quarterly event at your location. I do ongoing social media promos. I even make commercials for you, and you're sponsoring the camp, and that's $5,000. You can start to, and then so you lay it out where it's like they can kind of look at, well, maybe I just want to try this out a little bit, or maybe I'm ready to invest, but don't have a big budget, or hey, this looks like a really great thing. I want to move this forward. The other thing is, if you show somebody $500, $1,500, $5,000, it may be that they're not quite ready for $500, but $1,500 psychologically looks a lot more appealing when it's a lot less than the top option. Whereas if you said $500 and $1,500, it'd be like, ooh, $1,500 sounds like a lot, right? And so, and I'm just throwing numbers out, but it's almost like aim high because usually it's like if you don't ask, you won't get the number that you want. And a lot of times, like just offering the thing, it's like they're like, wow, that could be really valuable. And never underestimate like the lifetime value of customers you might bring in for one of these sponsors. Okay, so building content. I think this applies to both, and we've kind of touched on a lot of these. But gear reviews, coaching and tips, workout plans, motivational messages. The more content you can create in these areas, the more you can really promote what you're doing. Part of it is with a lot of this is if you can just document along the way. So if your workout program is you get one of your friends to like hold a camera on you while you talk through your workout, all of a sudden you can now take that video and edit it down. You can kind of create some 15-second, 20-second TikToks. You maybe create a 5-minute YouTube video that just sort of does like an overview of the workout, and maybe you do like a long form. But you can kind of take one piece of content, you can turn into a lot of different things. When you're done with the workout, you may like go into Canva and just create like a little booklet with all the same content that you just kind of said out loud, and then now all of a sudden that becomes something you can give away if somebody says, put your email address in here and I'll give you a free copy of this workout guide or something like that. So that creating content and reusing it lots of different ways is where you can get kind of a lot of bang for your buck in terms of you're not having to do a lot of work, but at the same time you're creating a lot of different assets, and you can see where when you share those, where they make the most impact. So this next one, smile and die. I spent a lot of my career in sales, so this was like, whenever you were trying to get new contacts, that was sort of the thing. You had to pick up the phone, you had to call. I don't think it works as well now as it did back in the past, but the idea is the same, is like you have to just do the numbers. So if you go and ask 100 people to sponsor you, there's going to be some percentage that will hire you. Maybe it's 1% or 3% or 5%, but it's like for every 100 reach outs, you maybe get 50 callbacks, and if you get 50 callbacks, you start to have a conversation. Maybe 10 people want to really explore it further, and maybe 5 of them decide they want to hire you for one event. But then once someone's hired you for one event, maybe go back and resell them on ideas and continue to build that base. So the smile and dial here maybe isn't actually dialing on the phone. It could be sending an email or a direct message or showing up in person. I put that right there, and show up. One particular job I had, it was like every small business could benefit from it. And so anytime I had a meeting with someone, I would go in and work with them. I'd present it and hopefully close the sale or whatever. And then I would do what I called a clover leaf, when that just meant I went to the business on the right, business on the left, and the two directly across the street. And I would just say, hey, I helped your neighbor. I can help you too. Would you like to talk about it? And it's like sometimes just showing up and saying, hey, I'm a Division I athlete. I'm doing a number of sponsorships with different organizations. I think I could bring some value to what you're doing. Would you like to talk about it? It doesn't have to be a hard sell. It's almost like if you show up and they get a sense for your personality and they see that proactivity, you can get a conversation started. And it might just be a quick conversation, but they might say, hey, give me a call back in a month when, I'm going to have a budget for some advertising or something like that, and you can follow up. So I made the comment here, target individuals and not companies. So there's an expression, it's like companies don't, people don't buy from companies, they buy from people, right? And it's the same is true, like if you see a company like, let's say Nike. Okay, if you want to go to Nike, trying to sell to Nike is very, very hard. However, there's probably someone at Nike that really aligns with what you're doing. So let's say that Nike brings out let's say they bring out, I don't know, does Nike doesn't do like field hockey sticks, right? No. Yeah, okay.
STX does.
Right, okay. Well, STX would be like a big one. Right. So let's talk about Nike and then we'll talk about STX. So let's say Nike decided to come out with a field hockey stick for the first time. So there probably within Nike is one person whose job is called something like product manager, and their job has been to from scratch figure out how to create and build this and get it ready to go to market. So the day they announce that, they've spent an enormous amount of work, probably a year or a couple of years of their life doing nothing else but figuring out how to get this thing to market. No one else in the business of Nike cares more than that person does about that product. So if you can figure out who that person is, which might not be that easy with a company as big as Nike, but let's say you could figure out who that person is, and you send them a note on LinkedIn, say, hey, I've been an SCX user for a long time, but I'd be very interested in trying out your stick. And if I like it, I'll do a review of it on my site. It's like, number one, they might send you a free stick. Number two, you've now made a contact with someone who's very, very closely connected with what you do that would benefit probably more than anyone else in that organization in hiring, right? So, that's just an example. Now, STX is another one that's interesting because they're already in the business. So it's kind of like anyone who plays the sport knows them, has probably used their equipment at some point, and would be a candidate. So if you're the one who shows up to STX, if you're the one that reaches out to their promotional department, if you're the first one or the only one to say, hey, I would like to, review your product, promote your product, I would like to, really make this part of my brand, again, you get to that right person, that's going to be, now they may be, talking to half a dozen people that are in a similar space, but at least you kind of raise above just by being the one to reach out. So that finding the right person and then reaching out, and I said here through multiple channels, and this is huge. In sales, there's this whole concept now especially. It used to be they say you needed to make 3 to 4 contacts to actually get a response. Well, that was 20 years ago. Today, because everybody's bombarded with social media and emails and everything else, they say it takes 9 times to get a response. So 9 times you have to reach out and try to make contact, getting no response, and then finally someone will. That's the point at which someone notices that you're trying to reach them. So that's where, especially if you've identified that key person at maybe STX, you've identified them. If you send them a message and they don't respond, don't give up, because you may have to hit them 8 or 9 times before they even notice you're trying to contact them. But to me, this is where multiple channels can be huge. Because if someone starts getting DMs from you from Instagram and from LinkedIn, and you start tagging them, both their brand and them individually in TikTok videos, or you go in and start liking their videos, responding to them, all of a sudden you could have 9 or 10 kind of contact points, and they're all of a sudden used to seeing your name. So then you send them a message and say, hey, I would like to talk with you about sponsorship. All of a sudden, you're not a stranger anymore. You have been part of their social media world, and you've been reaching them. Your name is familiar. Offer to start small, and I kind of hinted at this with the small business ideas. Not everyone is really kind of tuned in yet to how this is going to be useful as promotion, as an advertising method, or whatever. So starting small is a great way to just figure out. Is this good for both of us? Number one, if I work with you, does it align with my brand? Because you don't want to have this incongruity between what you represent and who you promote. But at the same time too is if I show up and build content or reference you or we do a promotion together, is it going to bring you business? And really kind of cultivating that situation, it's that first sale can be the hardest. That kind of first hey, let's do this one thing. But I always say the second one's the most important. Because it's the second one where they figured out this is worthwhile, and I will move forward again. And a lot of times that second one will be your opportunity to say, hey, we could do another event like this, or we could do a couple of different things, and you can kind of start to expand. And that's where some of those packages come into play. Get meetings, and so I think sometimes there's a feeling we're so used to digital communications, whether it's a text or tweet or DM or email or whatever. And sometimes that can feel we talked because we traded messages. But face-to-face interaction in real time has a much, much bigger effect than any message you can send out digitally. So to me, all these reach outs have one goal. It's get a face-to-face meeting. And Zoom's fine. I mean, I think the world is used to Zoom now. So in some ways, that's a good way if you're not sure yet if this is going to go anywhere. It's you can do a Zoom and you can have a face-to-face meeting without spending a whole lot of time or money or travel or anything like that. But ultimately, it's get the meeting, because having that conversation helps them figure out what you're about. Because a lot of times it's not just the name, image, likeness. The thing that's interesting about all 3 of those is those are all very static things, right? Your name isn't moving around. You don't get a sense of personality from your likeness or even an image necessarily. And so that interaction, that face-to-face, can be a really good way to develop rapport, start to build a relationship, and start to establish here's why you want to hire me, because I'm proactive and I'm energetic and I bring kind of an optimism into the room, and they see that, it's yeah, that's what I want my brand associated with that. So that's the kind of the smile and dial. And to me, this is where a lot of the hustle is right there. It's it can be easy. Got a lot of hustle in creating content and doing the media side. But this is the difference between just building a following versus building opportunities to create monetizing something that's going to generate revenue. Which and that really brings us then to monetize. It's Because in the end, you can have all the following in the world, and you can have all the engagement in the world, but it only starts to matter when somebody writes a check, and or hit you with the Venmo or whatever. So so with monetizing, my feeling here, and when you really see, like, in social media, starting to see a lot of very developed personalities, they never just do one thing. They'll maybe be monetizing through the channels like YouTube or TikTok or something like that, but they're promoting something. It's an online course, or it's an app they've created, or it's merch, or it's maybe a Patreon page, or we've talked a lot about Cameo. It could be those types of things. And to me, someone that's good has a monetization model. Somebody who's great has a lot of monetization models. So when I list some of these things out, whereas some of these I think you kind of have to pick something and really focus on it. To me, the monetization models, you try all of them in one form or another, because what you're doing, you may be able to monetize in several different ways at once. So online training to me, that's an easy one, because you can use free training and free coaching and free tips and everything to kind of get people interested, but then immediately offer a way that they can get more content, deeper content. So whether that's through like an online course through Thinkific, or whether it's like Patreon page, and now all of a sudden there's a library of like, here's like 10 hours of training in a particular skill or something like that. It's like having some way to go from maybe some free content to content that people would find valuable enough to pay for, because every time you're giving away free content, you can be just subtly and reminding people that they can also go and get more. If it's like, you like what you see here, sign up for this online course. And the beauty of online training and anything you create once and is now available is you don't have to be present for it. So it's like, once you've created like the online course, you can spend the next 2 years finding different ways to promote that online course, but it's out there. So if somebody wants to go and sign up, pay $99 and have access to it, or subscribe to Patreon, whatever, it's like, that's it. You don't have to, it can be automated. You don't have to be. So you can be practicing, you can be on the field, you can be working out, whatever, you're not even involved, but there's money coming in. So it's that idea of making money. They always say making money in your sleep, but it can be making money while you're on the field. So, all right, next one, clinics and camps. Like this one is, to me, I think this is an easy one in the sense that, like, if you have access to students who want to learn how to play like you play, then creating a camp, it's really just a matter of getting that message out. I can tell you, as a parent of several athletes in my family, like we do we do camps in the summer, we do weekend stuff, we do eating, like we'll do these like training sessions where it's like every Wednesday night for 6 weeks, and it's like anytime, because most of the rec sports are set up where you practice one night, you go to a game. And that's not how, and as you know, that's not how you get good at a sport. So you need additional stuff, whether it's training opportunities or teams or other leagues or whatever. Having those kinds of training. So that one where it's like it's in your hometown or it's near school or something where you can kind of set up a training location for people to come to. That can be a very easy one, because like a day camp, you could probably easily charge, several $100s per kid to come to a day camp, and you and maybe 1 or 2 friends could really teach a lot, with 6 hours a day and be able to do that. So of course you have to kind of work through. It's like everything. You got to build a business model for that. You got to figure out, what are the legal requirements? Where, how do I get access to location? What are, some of the safety measures need to be in place? All those kinds of things. But those can be very clear, easy, tangible ones, because you can get a sign-up list out there. You can promote it to your audience. You find out ahead of time, like, do you have enough to run the program? And if you do, you're gonna, you do the day or the week or whatever, and you're gonna make the money because you already kind of collected that on the way in. So that one can be a very easy one. Only downside, it's kind of the opposite of online courses. It requires your time. Anything that requires your time, like scarce commodity, you got to think about, like, am I going to make enough in this day or this week of, this 5-day day camp? Am I going to make enough to make it worth my time? So merch is another one that you can make money on and not be involved. We live in a world where you can automate everything. So if you can create, whether it's a T-shirt or maybe it's a ball or something that's like branded with your name or whatever, you can sell that, and that can be on an online store. You can automate it, or it can be like something where you do a drop off at FedEx a couple times a week, and with the gear. So that one's another one where can be fairly low time involvement, but markup can be pretty good. I'll show one of the things like Canva is a great way to kind of test this idea out, because you can create t-shirts and mugs and whatever. You design something, you put it on a t-shirt. You want to buy one t-shirt, $20. It's like, so you may not be able to sell it for more than $20, but you could get 5 of them and see if you can sell them. And if you can sell them, it's like, okay, that works. Now I can go and get a bigger quantity, so I get a lower price, and you can kind of figure out what you want to do. But there's lots of ways to just test these things out very easily. So appearances we talked about, lots of different ways. We've already talked about you can do that. Ads and promotions. So this is the other thing that you think about. These local brands that might hire you to come and show up for an event, they might also just hire you to be in an ad. So if you can kind of connect your sport or just your approach to things or your kind of tagline to their product somehow, you could create an ad for them. They might pay for all the production and everything else. Like, you might just have to show up and be in the ad, and that may be maybe more valuable to them than an event that's just a one day. They maybe have an ad they're running on on streaming or on YouTube or through Meta or something like that. So that's another area there. Social media engagement recommendations. So this is just, if you're on social media all the time, if you're like, hey, I'll place your product, or I'll talk about your product, or I'll kind of say sponsored by. I work with with someone who does like Twitch. Basically does these live streams and has a pretty massive following. One of the things he does is he actually works with applications like Graphite, where it's like low code. He shows people how to write software with it. Well, one of the low code platforms hired him. They sponsor his show now, because he's been every day kind of going, or every week he does these builds and he's showing how it works. And now it's like sponsored by this company. And that's just because they see like he's showing people what can be done with their product. And he's doing it to increase his influence, but at the same time, he was able to like connect that to something that was valuable. So that's where the content you create could actually turn into something where it's valuable for sponsorship. So say ball handling and stick skills for field hockey could then turn into, hey, I do this live stream every week, and 4,000 people show up and kind of watch my live stream, or it's a YouTube channel or whatever. Would you like to sponsor one of my videos or the whole series for a period of time? And so then that all of a sudden becomes an opportunity where they see that they're not just sponsoring to put their name on something. It's something that actually drives people towards their product naturally. Okay. Last one I just said here: design your own gear or apparel. I would say that any collegiate athlete has more insight about what is good and what is missing in the gear supporting your sport. So sometimes it's the smallest things that can turn into a product that you can have someone else produce and you can promote it, but you can kind of make that your own thing. I just think about you see trends happening, and maybe this isn't a particular sport, but I think about I don't even know what it's called, but I know there's like sometimes like you'll see an athlete where maybe have like something going on with a muscle or whatever, and they have like it's almost like the tape that's like cut out, and it's like it kind of provides pressure and support, but it's like almost like you stick them on, and it's like somebody figured out that like, hey, I don't have to wear a big giant brace for this. Like, we could just do this really lightweight adhesive thing that kind of like supports whatever ligament is a little bruised or whatever, and at the same time it's light enough that it doesn't interfere with the sport. I'm quite confident an athlete came up with that. Somebody somewhere along the line. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but it seems like that would be the kind of thing where it's like the gear, or it's like hey, they've been making these helmets this way forever, and this one thing is just so annoying. There's a blind spot in this one place. It's like design a new helmet, and it may seem like a small thing, but like you take the design to a company that's already doing this. You can say, hey, why don't we make this together? I'll promote it, but so almost like tweaking the gear. Finding that thing that's missing, there could be some great opportunities there. And we, like the social media, we live in a world where getting something manufactured is relatively low, low impact effort once you know exactly what it is. Designing your own gear and apparel could be another thing. At apparel, like, this could be the thing where like your trademark can turn into that product that you sell. So if you create something that you wear regularly that really stands out on the field, it's like kind of part of your gear in a sense, but it just it sort of represents your brand. You can promote that as it's like as your product, as your or just it could be like workout gear or warm-ups or whatever. So just some other examples there. So all right, let's talk a little bit about the influencer app. So I've been going through this. At first, I was a little unsure about its value. I'm more convinced now of what it can do for you. I think it's one of those things that, like most of these things, it's as good as the content, and it's still very early. They're still getting started and getting companies to sign up. But one thing that I found really useful is just going through and reading the descriptions of every kind of platform or app or different component that's on it, because it starts to show you what's out there. Like some of them are apps that are designed to help you like be able to text with your fan base with still keeping a little bit of like a safe distance, if that makes sense. Others like the Cameo ones are ones where somebody will say, oh, I want this kind of inspirational message for my student athlete who's having their 14th birthday, and so you record a message, but it's like pretty simple and quick. There are others that are like kind of match you with brands. So they all have their different pros and cons, but it's almost like even just going through and reading them starts to really illuminate all the different ways that you can monetize your NIL. So a lot of the ideas I've been presenting throughout have been as kind of going through those and seeing, okay, here's one that may give you free gear. Here's another one that lets you sell gear. Maybe I ought to get those two to work together. Or here's one that matches with fans. Here's one that matches with sponsors. Here's ones that kind of gives you a profile that you can use to promote maybe a speaking series or speaking engagement you want to do or something like that. So like each one of them, so it's worth spending some time just looking to see what's there, create some profiles, test them out. Like most things with social media, those that are there first and start to really do something with it before anybody else does usually are the ones that have the most growth, because by the time everyone else is catching on, you've already reached a level where you're prioritizing their algorithms and that kind of thing. Yeah, here was the example I talked about. Using Canva. I just did a screen clip here real quick. The Entreprofessor can be a T-shirt for $20. It's like so you can take, if you have a logo. This is where I think that likeness thing could be really interesting. If you had that like kind of animated image of yourself or some kind of icon that represents you, creating some kind of memorable logo, that can easily be something that turns into merch that just in and of itself just could be interesting or unique, so that when people are getting to know you or you're starting to follow you, it's like, hey, by the way, you can get get a shirt or a mug with my image. And Canva is a great platform for like, it's free. You can create all kinds of like beautiful artwork. You don't have to be an artist. Most of the time you can just kind of take what's there and just adjust it, create a logo, whatever. You can even create a brand palette. So if you have like a particular color scheme, you can choose, and that way if you want to do a lot of different things, you can kind of keep everything with a consistent brand. But you can start to, at a fairly low cost, to produce some of this stuff as a way to test it. It's like you couldn't afford to sell a lot of shirts if you're paying $20 a piece for them. But what you could do is test, like, I want to know, like, would people buy a shirt if I had it? You can produce 5 or 10 of them and see if you can sell them, just to see, is that something that people would respond to? And if the answer is yes, then you might go back, find someone that would make a few hundred of them for maybe, $2 a piece or something like that. But a lot of the entrepreneurial process is just experimenting, like figure out, like, is it going to work? I'd rather drop $60 and realize it's not going to work than to, have like 400 shirts, like trying to figure out who's ever going to wear these, right? As far as, and this was where I was going with the influencer thing, it's like, post your pics. I mean, that's an easy one. The influencer app just makes it so easy to post. So that's an easy one. Just creating profile content with your value message that you can use and reuse. So this is where, going back to that plan and build it, it's like build a profile, just like almost, it could be just on Pages or a Word doc or something, just like really get clear on what's the value message that I bring to my fans, maybe to parents of fans, maybe to sponsors, and kind of work out that where you have this really great message. And then every time you go onto one of these things and say, I'm going to create a profile, it's like, okay, I'm going to upload the photo, I'm going to drop in the profile information, and now you have a profile on the app. You can start to experiment with it, see if it works or not, but you're not having to spend a ton of time on it. So just creating those assets. So mentioned here, like just review all the exchanges and initiatives. It's whatever in the middle of the bottom of the app. I think it's like the pound sign or whatever. There's one that comes up, it's exchanges and initiatives. There's 2 tabs. There's a lot of different types of platforms and apps there and different opportunities. Read through all those, and some of them you may look at and say, yeah, that doesn't fit what I want to do. But for any that look even remotely interesting, try them out, because it's a connection point. And if not a lot of others try them out, you may have an advantage because you're the first to be there. Same thing with the discover opportunities. So quite a number there in the fan engagement space, and also appearance facilitators and merch providers. So going back to, you might experiment with that idea on Canvas, but some of the merch providers would be able to help you whenever you're ready for higher volumes, be able to get better pricing, and kind of be able to tailor it to what you want to do. So and then this one here is like just build a profile for any platform that fits your brand. Because it's like having a profile is usually half the thing. It's like having a photo on it, having some description will differentiate you from 80% of what's out there. Because when I went in there, it's like the profiles were the ones that show profiles. You'll see a lot of them. It's like there'll be a name, but that's it. They're not developed. And so just even getting that started, can make a big difference. It'd be like having a TikTok without like having a profile image, or it's just having some videos that don't really have any connection to each other. It's like that. Just that little bit of effort can really make the most of that. And then, of course, with all of this, with influencer, if anybody hires you through any of these, it's automatically going to kick off your compliance stuff. So if you get a Cameo thing, it's like you make $50, like that's going to be reported, so you don't have to worry about any of the administration. And it's actually pretty easy with any of the other stuff too. So like an auto dealership, it pays you $500 to come out for the day and do a clinic. They give you a check, you just type it in, and so it's useful for that as well. Just that you have it. Well, and thanks all for tuned in. I hope this has been worthwhile, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the future.